Hello, everyone. This is Secular Sekai with Tridents Against Tyrants, and yeah, we are back this week. Last week, unfortunately, I just had too many things happening, and unfortunately wasn't able to make it to a stream, which is pretty rare. Even if I have to reschedule the time entirely, I typically will always try to stream every single week. Um, but yeah, um, between work and then having to drive to another city and some family matters, yeah, it was just one of those rare weekends where there really was not time. Um, so apologies for that. Tried to make up for that by uploading a video, which many of you may not have seen yet, because I don't think it got picked up by the algorithm or hasn't been out long enough to be seen by a lot of people. But if you check the channel, you'll see most recent video upload is of an original song, a lyric video um, that someone I know put a lot of work into, as far as the lyric video, and then a friend of mine, we worked together on putting together the actual music itself. So definitely go check that out if you get a sec, if you have a sec. In any case, we're gonna get started. Hey, Darren, good to see you. Uh, Pretty soon. Let me go ahead and I'm kind of just sharing the stream around on Discord right quick to let people know if they're even awake to come check the stream out. Yeah, if you happen to know of any Discord channels or any anywhere else like Facebook, Twitter, or any other social media, and please feel free to share. It helps to, you know, spread word and uh, get more people in, to check out the stream, especially when the hours have to be off like they are today. Uh, as for why the hours are off today, uh, well, to put it simply, this month, October, is election season in Republic of Georgia. And next month is obviously the election in the United States. So between those two things, and people I know involved with both, it's been a lot. It's been a lot. I was asked last minute to assist with something today, so my schedule has adapted. And hence we are here right now because I said, damn it, I don't care how busy I am this weekend. I am not missing another stream. All right. Anyway, let me finish this up and we're going to go ahead and get started with the news. All right. I'm also planning to join the shills today, assuming that the time is still at the usual time. Oh, hey, Anton is here. Good to see you, Anton. Hey. Always glad to see you in the chat, my friend. All right, let's see. I'm actually going to check that right now as well. That way I can give accurate information because if it turns out the shills are at a different time than they usually are, that will throw my schedule into disarray, unfortunately. Let us find out. I don't think so. I think it's at the same usual time. I can't tell because it hasn't been put up on YouTube yet. I guess I will find out later today. Anyway. I guess while I'm finishing this up, just yeah, guys, it's well, apples and oranges. Of course, nothing can compare to what is happening in Ukraine. Um, but outside of Ukraine and the war itself, I can tell you that friends of mine in Georgia, it's not looking so great. The political situation there. I said this the other day. I I, I can't remember who I said this to actually, because I'm so I was so tired. But Georgia is approaching a moment where they're reaching a reckoning point where the decision is going to be made soon if there will be a Maidan moment or if Russian appeasement will end up being the policy officially of Tbilisi. And I think several people, myself included, are waiting with bated breath to see which will be the outcome. Although I think many of us, myself included, already have our predictions. All right, I think that's enough shares. So we're going to jump into the news. Let me pull this up. Hmm. There's actually more than one news source on this. I see one from the Odessa Journal, which I'm actually not familiar with the Odessa Journal and their reputation. I really don't know anything about the Odessa Journal other than the fact that it has the name of Odessa in it. So I guess we'll go with one that many of us are more familiar with for now until I have a chance to look into that one more. We'll go with the Kiev Independent for this. So, first news. There we go. Oh, let me put it into reader mode. Ah, I think it's fine. I won't go with reader mode for today, for the first article. Oh wait, yes I will. And there's a reason why I will. Sometimes I don't mind, but I forget that without reader mode, there's a lot bigger chance of certain pop-ups that I don't want to pop up. Just because ads exist. Anyway, Zelensky gives Pope painting about Bucha massacre during Vatican meeting. So, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky visited the Vatican on October 11th for a meeting with Pope Francis, marking another step in his European tour. Zelensky's second private audience at the Vatican comes amid an uneasy atmosphere between the Holy See and Kiev, caused by some of the Pope's past controversial remarks about Russia's war in Ukraine. During a meeting that lasted 35 minutes, the Pope presented Ukraine's head of state with a bronze bas relief? With a flower and an inscription, "Peace is a fragile flower," the ANSA news agency wrote. In turn, Zelensky reportedly gave Pope Francis an oil painting named The Bucha Massacre, the story of Marichka. Bucha, a suburb northwest of Kiev, was occupied by Russian troops shortly after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine began in February 2022 and saw some of Russia's worst atrocities against civilians during the war. I remember that. I remember that. It was pretty horrible. Um, yeah. Not just pretty horrible. That's an understatement. Bucha was a massacre, and it was an atrocity. I remember it. The news reports about it quite vividly. The details of talks between Zelensky and the Pope have not yet been made public. Yes, it began in February 22 and saw some of Russia's worst atrocities against civilians during the war. While having repeatedly denounced Russia's full-scale invasion and urging peace, Pope Francis's call for Ukraine to, quote, not be ashamed to negotiate with Russia in March was met with apprehension in Kiev and among its partners. The comments were seen as calls for surrender to Russian aggression. And guys, we cannot emphasize this enough. This is not the way to go. This is not the way to go. You know the old saying, don't negotiate with terrorists? Also don't negotiate with warlords. Don't negotiate with tyrants. Don't negotiate with dictators. Which some people would say, if you look at the geopolitics of the world, isn't realistic because you do all the time see that kind of negotiation between people who fit several of those descriptions. But that's not an option here. It's not. If I'm sorry, but unfortunately, Meloni and her conservative crowd who perhaps quietly don't want Italy to be marked for economic devastation by the EU, but also just want the war to be over, and maybe some of them don't even hate Putin all that much. Don't let them put a bug in your ear. Don't let them put a bug in your ear, Francis. Come on. Peace by appeasement. What's the old saying? The old saying is, those who would sacrifice security, those who would sacrifice their liberty for their security deserve neither. I'm paraphrasing, but it's true. It's true. If you're willing to surrender because someone is punching you in the face, then you are no longer free and you are no longer safe, because what the hell is going to stop them the next time they decide they want to punch you for money, for your house, for, I don't know, just because they want to, because it's fun? No, that's not how things work. So the Pope is very wrong on this, in my opinion. The Vatican's relationship with Ukraine also came into the spotlight recently, with the nomination of Mykola Bichok, a Ternopil-born bishop of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church in Australia, to the College of Cardinals. While the nomination of Ukraine's only cardinal was seen as a positive signal toward Kiev by some, the decision to choose a lesser-known bishop over Sviatoslav Shevchuk, the primate of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, came as a surprise. Zelensky's visit to the Vatican follows his trips to the UK, France, and Italy, where he met leaders of the respective countries to present them with Ukraine's five-step victory plan. The president is also expected to travel to Germany later on October 11th to meet with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Ukraine's head of state is touring the European countries to ramp up military support and mobilize backing behind the victory plan, which Kiev describes as a path toward a just and lasting peace. The situation grows ever more dire for the besieged country as Russian forces keep pressing on in the east and the population faces energy deficits in the coming winter. In the meantime, the potential return of Donald Trump to the White House prompts fears of weakened U.S. support. That will not happen. Donald Trump will never, ever be president of the United States again. I say that with confidence. I say that without flinching. I say that because I know it to be true. And those of you would say, well, you don't really know that to be true. No. It's not going to happen. Because there are too many people, myself included, who are mobilized to make sure that doesn't happen. Now, Congress, I can't make any promises about Congress. Unfortunately, I can't promise a clean sweep and that there won't be any spoiler effect in Congress that negatively affects aid to Ukraine. That's what has me awake at night. That's what has me the most concerned about this November. But the presidency will never go to that man's hands again. Hey, it wasn't me. Welcome. Glad to see you. And that was the end of the article. There's a picture of the Pope. Ah. Roger that. Thank you. Oh, appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Hmm. All right, so next piece of news. Let me go ahead and pull it up right quick. Actually, let me pull up multiple articles. Let me pull this down for 1 sec while I do so. All right, let's see here. We have updates from the Kursk side, from the Kursk offensive. And what's interesting, though, is despite there, of course, being updates that, you know, uh, come from Russia, just reorienting their strategy and their tactics. What is interesting about Kursk is you have to remember Kursk is not part of Ukraine. Ukraine has never said, we're going to take Kursk and hold it forever or anything like that. Nah, I mean, it's only if Russia decides that they are going to let Ukraine do so and set up whatever Ukraine would want to set up in the area. So any troops who are fighting in Kursk otherwise would be fighting on the Eastern Front and other parts of Ukraine. So, let's see, more related to the war and fighting within Russian borders, and a weapon downed, a Russian advanced secret weapon downed in Ukraine, which sounds a bit like clickbait for a headline, but we're going to take a look anyway. All right, let me go ahead and pull up the next article. Oh, before I continue, though, let me go ahead and put the article we just were looking over into the chat for all of you. Military and foreign affairs. I see from Fupisk, Fupiskiliski? Fupilskiliski. Uh, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know exactly how that should be pronounced, but I see, talking about Kursk and Military and Foreign Affairs Network unbiased for your discernment. Are you confident about Weird Orange Man losing as Tridents Against Tyrants is, Cheryl Watley? Oh, hey, Ozzy Bugga. Good to see you. Cheryl, good to see you. All right, let's go on to the next article. And this one's from CNN. I'm putting it in chat now. So, the Kursk operation has become normalized as Ukraine's Russia incursion enters third month. Putin is trying to downplay it. Now, I want you guys to remember this. Kursk is not about pushing all the way to Moscow. there's a bit of a romanticization and a some jokes about that when it was first happening and when breakthroughs were happening for Ukrainian armed forces into Russian territory, into Kursk. Uh, but it was never about that. Um, Kursk is strategically, it's, if Russia wants it back, they have to go and take it. If Russia wants to take it, they have to spend resources and send, soldiers off to that front. That it's no longer a war that can be fought by rules that Russia expects. They don't get privilege, thinking that they're immune from this type of attack or that type of attack just because, they're Moscovia. So uh let's keep reading. But the interesting thing about Kursk is, gain territory, lose territory. Ukraine could lose all of the territory they've taken in Kursk over the course of the next few months. And even if that did happen, so long as they do proper tactical retreats and it's, planned out, it could still be beneficial to Ukraine because Ukraine doesn't really care about keeping Kursk. Ukraine wants back Ukrainian territory. um, Ukraine's incursion into Russia's Kursk region is now entering its third month, with scores of settlements still firmly under its control. The operation marked the first time foreign troops entered Russian territory since World War II, embarrassing the Kremlin and proving to Kiev's backers and the rest of the world that Ukraine's military was not perpetually on the back foot. I want to also stress one more thing. Uh, oh, yeah, there we go. Not just to Kiev's backers and the rest of the world that Ukraine's military was not perpetually on the back foot, but also this proved that I want to emphasize the symbolic significance of Kursk for the decades to come, not just for nation states, but for organizations who oppose the Kremlin around the world. There is a group called the Forum of Post-Russia Nations or Post-Russia States. And this organization is basically composed of people who reside within what is today known as the Russian Federation, what I call the fake Federation of Moscovia, who they have their own map and their own idea of, in an ideal world, this is how the national borders would be for all of our different respective groups, all of our different respective movements, organizations, political and ethnic groups, etc. And so this gives hope and gives a vision to those who realize that Russia, doesn't have to and won't necessarily always exist with the borders that it has today, which is something that the Kremlin itself has been acutely aware of and terrified for anyone to discuss for a long, long time. In case any of you have a short memory and happen to be over the age of 50, you know, the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. Of the borders of Moscovia used to be a lot larger, and now they're smaller. The borders of Moscovia today are still very large, but tomorrow they may be smaller. And yeah, anyway, I just wanted to emphasize that. Some 9 weeks later, Ukraine's advance has stalled, and neither side has made major gains or counterattacks in recent days. The endgame is unclear. Analysts believe Kiev is trying to use its initial momentum for a morale boost and a potential bargaining chip, while Russian President Vladimir Putin is trying to downplay the entire incursion and limit the resources Russia's war machine devotes to countering it. Ukraine has maintained a foothold in Kursk of about 786 square kilometers, or 300 square miles, according to the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War, or ISW, a think tank in Washington, D.C. Russian advances are mostly happening on the flanks of our foothold, commander of a Ukrainian battalion inside Kursk, Dmitro, who uses the call sign Kolod, meaning cold, told CNN on Wednesday. They keep trying to advance, but the gains are incremental. Somewhere they manage to take a street in the village, but it goes both ways. We also counterattack and push them back. Ukraine's main foothold is around the Russian town of Sutsa, and its military is trying to establish a second foothold around Veselo village. Ukraine has not disclosed how many troops it has sent to the region. That is good. Ukraine should not disclose that. They should leave the enemy guessing. So they have to do that calculus themselves and potentially miscalculate in any number of ways. Because send too few, and you'll be pushed back, and that's an embarrassment and ineffective. Send too many, and well, that could create an opening elsewhere, anywhere along. Remember, a border that is huge when you really look at it. Like, what is it? Similar to the size of the border between the U.S. and Mexico? It might be somewhere around that, or maybe not the U.S. and Canada. That's too big, I think. But it's a big border. This entire war front, guys, from west to north to east to south, uh, you know, land and sea. It's a big border between Ukraine and Moscovia for this war. A lot of places where the next attack or the next front could open. All right. Russia has deployed a reasonably large number of troops, estimated at 40,000, to defend and counterattack in Kursk. But analyst Mark Galeotti, Mr. Galeotti, described the initial force as built from wherever they can find, with Russia using conscripts and reservists at the outset of the incursion. This is equivalent to sort of scramping around your sofa cushions to find some small change. Galeotti, a senior associate fellow at the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, a British think tank, told CNN. Moscow has since deployed more experienced forces, but not as many resources as Russian civilians in Kursk would perhaps want. As fighting in the area continues, Russian authorities say more than 100,000 civilians have been displaced, while many others find themselves living behind Ukrainian lines. So, living behind Ukrainian lines. So, this doesn't actually specify if that means behind the lines in Kursk or inside of Ukraine itself. So I find that interesting but with 100,000 people displaced, it wouldn't surprise me if there were those who were evacuated for their safety into Ukraine, which I'm sure would be a controversial topic in Ukraine for a couple different reasons. But in a time of war, guys, always remember, unarmed civilians doesn't matter. It does not matter their attitudes, their philosophies, their ideologies. If someone is unarmed, they are not a threat. They are in harm's way. Then the rules of war state that there has to be some form of safe passage. It's just that's a basic tenet of human rights. Non-combatants need to be provided some form of safe passage. The Muscovites, the orcs may not do that, but Ukrainians have, well, basic decency and, respect for non-combatants, which is one thing that I highly respect about the Ukrainian armed forces. Over time, there is a degree to which the Kursk operation has become normalized, Galeotti said. We shouldn't assume that Russians have just come to accept it. I think Putin has managed to postpone judgment, but I don't think it's been completely waived. Russia is trying to avoid diverting any resources from the front lines of its full-scale invasion of Ukraine to fight in Kursk. Although the incursion was initially a shock to both the government and ordinary Russians, the Kremlin has played this down. According to John Lau, an associate fellow at Chatham House's Russia and Eurasia program, the strategy is to distract the population from what's happened, which is undoubtedly a major embarrassment, and to create the impression that this is not serious. Putin's government has characterized it as a raid and even downplayed their counterattack as a counterterrorism mission. Now, the reason why he well, I mean, I guess it's not the reason, but one part of why calling it a raid would be significant is because there have been probing attacks and missions in the Belgorod region, none of which, for a long time, for many months, none of which resulted in an immediate push like deep into Russian territory and holding territory, like the Kursk offensive. Um, but nonetheless, they had been occurring and they continue to occur. Um, so this is something that the Russian government, they try to downplay it because, it's something that has been going on for a while. Missions like these into Russian territory. But of course, it's impossible for them to do so with something this big. One Russian military blogger put the normalization into stark words, saying, "Most of Russia has already got used to the fighting near Kursk. Those who have nothing to do with the Kursk region are rather sluggishly interested in what is happening." Uh, that I gotta say, as someone who has been to multiple countries where any invasion of any part of the country would be considered one of the most heinous crimes, like an insult to the entire country. The fact that that is the attitude of many Russians, a sluggish interest because it's happening maybe half the world away from you if you're in Siberia or another distant part of Russia, nowhere near Kursk, you've never been there. It's a little mind-boggling to me. I mean, it's kind of like um, if uh, if an American were to say, "Oh, well, Hawaii is being invaded, but that has nothing to do with me," I'm sure there are some people who would say something like that, but there are many people who would not have that attitude, and it would be insulting that kind of an attitude for anyone to adopt it. Or another good example would be like if, I don't know, Prince Edward Island, um, or were to be invaded for Canada, or if Greenland were to be invaded, a reaction from Denmark regarding that. Um, yeah, it's a bit mind-boggling to me. Frontlines are moving only slightly, but the fighting is reportedly fierce, with Russian forces deploying numerous drones, barrel artillery, and aerial bombers, according to the Ukrainian commander. They don't hesitate to drop a bomb on a tree line if they assume we have troops there, Ukrainian battalion commander Kolod said. He claims Russia has now sent a powerful group of troops and combat brigades to where his unit is fighting in Kursk, and argued the Russian counterattack excuse me, was staved off by Ukraine's drones and mine attacks. The incursion into Kursk likely had multiple goals, analysts say, including giving Ukraine a narrative win. Their goal was to demonstrate to Ukraine's Western allies that the Russians are vulnerable and that there are limits to their ability to deploy combat power, said Lau, adding that the incursion also highlighted how Russia's red lines are rhetorical. It also provided a morale boost for Ukrainians. Several soldiers who spoke to CNN in September said that despite casualties and difficult operations, giving Russia a taste of its own medicine was worth the fight. I can 100% agree with that. Yet Ukraine's goal of diverting troops from the eastern front line to Kursk has so far failed. Kursk could see a bargaining chip for negotiations in the future. Could be a bargaining chip for negotiations in the future, though experts said. And also, I don't know if we could. I guess if we're making it binary, either success or failure, this statement would be true. But if we have to also account for the fact that it would be preventing additional resources from being sent to the east that otherwise are being used in Kursk right now. Because you got to remember, there can always be a ramping up of additional troops, additional men being sent to the eastern front lines. But the fact that they're only sending a few experienced soldiers and they're getting militias basically set up, or in the Kursk region from the Ork side, from the Moscovia side, um, that tells me that they're trying very hard to handle that situation without expending too much that would affect their military industrial complex. Um, so, but still, it's a normalization. It's not a full reversal. And to manage a full reversal, even if Ukraine has limited resources or troops in the Kursk region, which we don't know for certain, they haven't revealed the exact numbers. Um, I guess we'll see what we'll see what happens, but there is a chance that Russia may be underestimating, or that yeah they may underestimate exactly how many resources they have to put into Kursk, but only time will tell. All right, still a bit more of this article to go. All right, let's finish this article. I am very interested to see the rest of this. By taking this territory, they immediately ruled out the possibility of both the Russians and the Western allies saying, now it's time to stop, let's have a ceasefire, Lao said. Yep, strategically, that's a big part of it. Meanwhile, I don't, you know what? Kursk is kind of like, it's kind of like back when Ukraine had a bit of a foothold left in Luhansk. And Donetsk was still under Ukrainian control at the time, but that small foothold into Luhansk, it's like, well, no one can say that the borders are established on a map because no, not all of what Russia claims is, would be Luhansk or would be theirs is under Russian control. Those footholds do matter, and they can prevent the international community from saying, but there's already a line on a map that I can see that someone showed me a visual of it at some point. You want to prevent those nice and easy, convenient lines being drawn on a map. That's a huge part, especially of asymmetric warfare and warfare that involves long-term struggle against occupation. There's a lot of other topics related to that we could get into, particularly in the Middle East with a particular conflict, but that's not our topic for today. Meanwhile, the primary focus of the war remains on the front lines in Ukraine's eastern Donbas region, where its troops are fighting to retain control of the strategic city of Pokrovsk. Rather than focus resources on liberating their own territory, the Russian military has expanded its assaults on multiple fronts in Ukraine, including in key areas of Kharkiv, Donetsk, and Zaporizhia. It seems to be a very high priority for the Kremlin to advance as far as possible in Donbass, regardless of the losses, Lau added. There is a sort of window that is about to close because you get to this time of year when the roads turn to mud. Winter is setting in, guys. Winter is setting in. We got to remember that. Russia's daily attacks on Ukraine continued Thursday with several people killed in the regions of Odessa, Kherson, and Donetsk. Yeah. All right, let's take a look at the comments right quick before we continue. I see several more people here. Johanna, 3 Finlandi, Mitch Ashdown, UTV and Ham. Let's see. Dennis Davidov. I think someone asked if I had seen Dennis's video. I have not seen it yet. My morning, my day has been, it's been all over the place. Yugoslavia, Austria-Hungary. Yep, Hungary, states come and go. Okay. Here's a question. Ozybiga asks, do you have any insights you can share with us about Kadyrov's beef with a Dagestani rep? Also, how well are OT do the several dozen ethnic groups in Dagestan getting along? How well do the several dozen ethnic groups in Dagestan get along? Well, as far as Chechnya and Dagestan are concerned, I think I need to look into the nature of those connections more between Kadyrov and those from Dagestan. But my understanding is there's kind of been over the decades since the Chechen Wars more of a normalization within Chechnya of you know, this is how things are, and we have a special status. You know, we kind of can do things to a certain degree how we want to. Uh, you know, like we didn't fully lose the war. There are some things that are uniquely allowed in Chechnya to avoid another war. You know, ideas like that. Whereas in Dagestan, I think there are more people who have. I could be completely wrong. If anyone happens to be in touch with any Chechens or Dagestanis who want to offer their opinions, let me know. But with multiple different viewpoints, I'd be very interested to have conversations with them. But my understanding is maybe there's a bit more of an acceptance of the status quo right now in Chechnya, especially because it is a pretty major police state out of fears of another Chechen war occurring. Um, in Dagestan, I think the sentiments are a little bit more inflamed among some. Now, as far as the particular representatives that you're asking about, I don't know who they are or their stances, if they are more religious or more secular, if they're more, you know, loyal to groups outside of Moscow or to Putin and his inner circle. Um, but yeah, I hope that kind of answers that. So basically, I'm not familiar with that, but I am familiar in general about differences in opinion about Moscow and about rights that trickle down. If you not right, well, if you can even really call it rights, allowances or um, tolerance of the way they run things that trickles down to Dagestan and Chechnya. Differences of opinion within the two regions about that concerning Moscow. Um, Now, with regards to the several dozen ethnic groups in Dagestan and how they get along, um, well, without going into too much detail, um, let's just say, if you guys recall, I think it was around the time when the war in Gaza, most recent, you know, upflare with everything in Gaza happened after October last year, um, when there was a whole plane that was prevented from going anywhere because they suspected that someone on the plane was Jewish or something, and there was like a giant angry mob or something like that. That should give you a pretty decent idea of how tensions between religious and ethnic groups in Dagestan go. Uh, Especially when that's just regarding news of a conflict half the world away, um, you know, in a completely different part of the world. Um, yeah, but yeah, I mean, there's groups like the Avars, the Dargins, Kumiks, Lezgins, and of course ethnic Russians. Um, yeah, and putting aside religion, those who are Christian versus those who are, you know, Orthodox Christian versus those who are Muslim, um, and other religious groups in the region. Um, yeah, the history of how all of those groups have interacted with one another historically is pretty complex. I might actually do a video. You know, I might actually do a video about that one of these days, especially because of the ethnic demographic makeup of Dagestan, because it is very much not uniform. It's across the board with a lot of groups. There's a plurality for one group, but there's no majority of any of them. It's actually pretty fascinating split. Anyway, thanks for a great question. I'll try to come back to that with a video about it. And I see that Johanna 3 Finlandi was also curious about it. So now I feel extra motivated to make a video. All right. Dagestan sent 5,000 to ISIS. Remember? Yep. Cheryl pretty much summarized it right there with her sentence. Remember that Dagestan sent 5,000. Well, not the government of Dagestan, but within Dagestan, 5,000 fighters emerged who went to fight for ISIS. That's more than Chechnya, I'm pretty sure. So just keep that in mind, okay? Dagestan is not, maybe there is monitoring in Dagestan, but it's not as obsessive as in Chechnya. And the results kind of speak for themselves regarding that. Yeah. Yupu2408 asks, were the Crocus City Hall attackers somehow connected to Dagestan? It's funny you mentioned that. Excuse me. Sorry. Mouth is a little bit dry. I had been discussing and looking into that attack actually with some friends who run another YouTube channel that usually they discuss other topics, but this one was particularly of interest to them because it was an attack that was, it was based in religious violence. And I can't quite recall what the network was of those who perpetrated the attack and if they had ties to anyone in Dagestan. I'd have to go back and review that, but that's actually a good question. Yeah, I can tell you that regardless of whether there were ties or not, after that attack occurred, there was a large wave of anti-Muslim bigotry across the fake federation, across Moscovia. Unfortunately, I don't like any form of ethnic, religious, people-based, general, hatred or bigotry, discrimination, prejudice, hate crimes. I don't like any of that against any group of people ever. You know, you can be gay, you can be white, you can be black, you could be any racial, ethnic, religious group, Muslim, Christian, Jewish. You could be Satanist or a member of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. Like I don't care. It always saddens me when I hear about a group of people who get targeted because of events that happen in the world. Anyway, let's see. Zeddies too, the Shiite pockets of them in Dagestan. Oh wow. That you guys are giving me some idea. I should do a couple more videos or live streams or both on geopolitics around the world. I think I will. Live streams are usually easier for me, primarily because finding time to edit videos is like trying to pull the tooth out of an elephant for me. Which reminds me, I'm getting too lost in the weeds with these comments. Let me move on. We're going to do one more article real fast. Okay, if I did a video, that'd be quite interesting. Very good. Very good to know. Very good to know. Tajikistan. Oh, Tajik. Yes, that's right. That's right, Cheryl. That is correct. I remember. I don't remember the validity of it, but there was a huge wave, not just against Muslims in general, but against Tajiks specifically because of, during that attack, it was said there were ties to either to Tajikistan or that just in general Tajiks had perpetrated it or been involved in the attack. Which, yeah, oh man, I was just talking with someone about this the other day with regards to fighting against the Taliban in Afghanistan and Pakistan, the importance of getting resistance movements set up in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, like real cultural, deep-rooted resistance movements to the Taliban, because their hold is weaker in both of those countries. Man. Anyway, we're going to come back to this topic another time. Numerous others create crises, some real, some overblown, some imagined. This is true. This is true. Every situation is unique. All right. Anyway. All right. So I, as I mentioned, we're only about 50 minutes in, but I actually do have to go very soon because I volunteered to assist with something important. Because apparently I'm a masochist who just enjoys putting himself in situations where he's got so much to do that he is, slowly goes insane. Um, but I can manage to get there a few minutes later. So we're gonna finish out. Let's see. Another question. Do any of the drone repair labs have a social media presence, branded identity? It's funny that you ask that. And the answer to that would be yes. There are a few, such as, well, let me see if I can find them. Look up, where is it? There's a couple of different groups that I guess you could say are, um, that have a social media presence or branded identity. Actually, yeah, I mean, Facebook, Instagram, this one's even got LinkedIn. You know what? If you're wanting that, Nurse Sean, here, I'll put them in the chat for you right quick. Looks like Dr. Dawson isn't awake yet. No post for today's stream yet. I have a few ruse loose on top of paddock. Okay. So here's one for you to check out, Sean, which is Angry Birds. Check them out. They've got a social media presence, and they do good work. They do good work. And then another one that I'm less familiar with, but also have heard of, would be a Hero of Ukraine, and I haven't checked out their social media, but if you want to go take a look at them, yeah, definitely go check them out. I've put both of those links into the description. Into the chat, rather. Sorry, into the chat for the video. All right. All right, I gotta choose how I use my time wisely. Man. All right, Anton, I don't know if you're still here or not, but here's how we're gonna close out this video. We did make a little bit of headway with a few donations for the 110th Mechanized Brigade last time, and I always bring it back to that subject because some form of fundraising to help Ukrainian soldiers or civilians is what all this is about. It's not. I want to remind everyone. For me, this isn't just fun. It's not fun. Honestly, I really wish I didn't have to talk about any of this. I love discussing geopolitics. I don't love discussing the war and the pain and suffering of people because I really wish it weren't happening. I'm going to make my donation right now to our fundraiser, myself personally. If anyone wants to join me, we currently have that through PayPal. I hopefully by next week we'll have an additional donation method set up. And I'll let you guys know about that if I manage to get that finished and if it gets approved and everything fast enough. But yeah, I'm going to make my donation right now. And I'm going to do $50 for drones. Slava Ukraini. And Sent. Okay. Yeah. If you get that and you have a chance to, Anton, please feel free to put that into the Monobank jar. And for anyone who is able to donate directly to Monobank, the link to that should always be in the description of the video as well. If it doesn't work for you, PayPal, for most people, does work around the world. All right. Okay. Well, Cyrillic name that I have trouble pronouncing because it's got an F sound and a P sound right next to each other at the very beginning. Um, Interesting, interesting. I would definitely love to have a more in-depth conversation with you sometime to pick your brain for your opinions on things. Because I need to go back and review our comments, but I'd be interested to learn some of your views on some of these that we've been discussing then. Topics like Chechnya, Dagestan, and movements against groups in places like Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Tajikistan that violate human rights. I appreciate everyone for coming. I appreciate everyone for standing with Ukraine and against all forms of tyranny across the world, whether it be in Ukraine from hands of Russia, Republic of Georgia, the Middle East, whether it be at the hands of religious extremists or, anti-religious extremists of the fascist or communist flavors. Always stand for what's right. Always stand for freedom, democracy, people to have the right to choose what they believe in and have self-determination of their lives. And yeah, thank you again for being here. All right. I know it's a little abrupt, but I do have to go now. So thank you for being here. I'm gonna try to do at least one more short live stream sometime this upcoming week, since I missed the stream last week. And I will see you all again soon. All right. Thank you for being here, everybody. And Slava Ukraini. Oh, and I see that Anton did, in fact, put donations into the jar. And we are at 11,218.47 hryvnia. 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 Pronounced differently, depending on who you speak to. All right. Thanks, everybody. And have a great day.